do your
Good, how are you?
refresh.
I am good.
Refresh.
I got it. It's good.
Okay, the right way?
Yep.
All right.
Crazy is the best place to be.
Want me to screenshot it?
See?
Okay.
Good.
They were sitting over here and I said, can you move here so I can just pick on you? My line of sight.
All right, sorry all for the technical difficulties. That was the whole anxiety I had about starting this program, but we're really appreciative of all of you for being here. I'm Stephanie Coleman. I'm the Family Support Coordinator at the Center for Child Health and Development and also the Family LEN discipline. LEN stands for Leadership, Education, and Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities. And that's who is sponsoring tonight's series with Leia Holley from Families Together. She has been with Families Together for 20 years and has a son with significant autism. So she has been here, done this with the IEPs, and she does a lot to help families throughout Kansas as well with questions on IEPs. So, yeah.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for having us. This is exciting to be a part of.
Yes,
And I know you like to have us maybe a guinea pig, so we're pretty excited about that. It's good to see everybody, and thank you for joining us on Facebook. Sean will be monitoring your questions, so if you have any questions, type them in, and we'll get to them as we can. My name is Leia Holley, and I am with Families Together. How many of you guys here have ever heard of Families Together? Okay. Jeff, raise your hand, please.
Sorry.
Okay. Families Together is the Parent Training and Information Center. We serve Kansas families whose kids are birth to 21, or through 22 really, and who have any disability, any special health care need. We exist to encourage, educate, and empower families so that you can become effective members of your son's both medical and educational teams. And we talk about exceptionalities, sons and daughters with exceptionalities, because in Kansas, gifted also qualifies under special education, and I'll talk a little bit about that. As the Parent Training and Information Center, we help families navigate special education, community resources, understand your rights and responsibilities. The Parent Training and Information Center, we are federally designated and funded under the Office of Special Education Programs to be the Parent Training and Information Center. We have been in existence since 1982. So we're kind of that, for you guys that didn't raise your hand, we're that gem, that untapped resource or hidden resource. So, and then we're also the Family to Family Health Information Center. So we help families navigate healthcare, understand their kids' special healthcare need. I will tell you as a parent, I had a parent tell me we're that one-stop shop. We're that place you call when you don't know where to go. Because as a parent, I don't know the questions to ask if I don't know what's out there. And so if you don't know or you're struggling, you don't have to just call us when things are wrong. We can help you find good things too. Call us. All we do, we have a conversation about you and your child and try to help you figure out what the next step is or what resources are available. We have 3 centers. You have, for those of you here, you have a copy of the PowerPoint. It's underneath the blue paper you have. I will need the blue and the green form back, please, and Stephanie will need her white form back. We have 3 centers across the state. We serve the full state of Kansas. And if you'll notice, there's a link at the bottom of your page on this. This contains all of the resources and additional resources related to this training. So two of our organizational notebooks that we have. One is our caring notebook. It's a notebook for families whose kids have special health care needs. So it helps keep everything organized so that when you go to the doctor, everything's there. And I'm hoping my husband's not watching because it's the way I'll let my husband take our son Sean to the doctor, because everything is there. And so his medications. The other, All About Me, is an organizational notebook for your IEP and other things if your kid does not have a special health care need. So to tell you a little bit about my family, a picture was up there originally. My youngest son, Sean, when he was 2, we were told to put him in an institution. He would never have eye contact, never be a functioning member of our family. Be prepared to put him in an institution. He is 26, so at 24 years ago, we thought we were the only family in Kansas that included a child with autism. So I will tell you, Families Together is why I'm standing here and why my son is working right now, is because of the people at Families Together. We have a statewide team full of people who are compassionate, understand families. They're parents and family members who have been there and want to help families. So I'm not Families Together. We've got a full team that's there. And so Sean, we went through this whole thing with Sean when he was first diagnosed and told to put him in an institution. We were told to put him in an institution at that point, and I called all these numbers and everybody said, we can't help you, wrong number, make too much money, live on the wrong side of the county line. We're a military family, just moved to Kansas. And I call Families Together, and I can still hear Bonnie Penny's voice on the other end of the line saying, oh, I have another mom whose kid does some of those same things. And I'm like, you don't understand, he has autism. Bonnie matched me with another family who had a kid with autism, who had similar needs. So I was no longer alone. And then through our journey, we've used Families Together to help navigate the special education, the community resources. Sean's had 3 epilepsy surgeries, been hospitalized, so many health needs. Families Together's been there that whole way for us. And my oldest son, JP, when he was in 2nd grade, was told he probably wouldn't read on grade level. He had visual dyslexia or scotopic sensitivity syndrome. He is now 27. He has a job working as an IT finance consultant, and by the time he was in middle school, he tested out of LD services and into gifted. It's all about building a team around your kid and understanding your rights as part of that so you can be that effective team member. So, first off, we want to look at the mission for Kansas. What is Kansas, the State Board of Education's mission? It says to prepare Kansas students for lifelong success through rigorous, quality academic instruction, career training, and character development according to each student's gifts and talents. That's all students. That didn't say students who don't have disabilities. All students. Your kid is a general education student first and foremost. They just happen to need special education services. How many of you guys are parents? Awesome. Okay, elementary age? Okay, middle school? High school? All right, lots of little guys here. Good, nice. Okay, so all students are general education students. So the State Department, the curriculum is set. There's this intended curriculum that's set. What we have to do for our students with disabilities is determine what they're going to learn, when they're going to learn it, where they're going to learn it, and how they're going to learn it. We still want them to learn and access the general education curriculum, but we need to provide them specially designed instruction and supports and resources. So not all students with disabilities need an IEP. You have to have a disability, one of 13 categories, as well as need special education services. So before we get into the IEP piece, how many of you guys' kids already have IEPs? Okay, and the rest of you guys are still trying to figure out if your kid needs an IEP or?
I have applied for one at the school,
Right.
but we haven't had our second meeting
Okay.
to discuss what they feel they can do.
Okay. She said she had, they've already requested the evaluation and they're waiting on the next meeting. And before I go in here, please ask questions if you have, and as well as know that our phone number is on the rack cards that I gave you in your handouts, and you can call any one of our centers and we're there to walk you through that process too. And the other thing is there's no cost to our services and there's no waiting list. So You just call. You might not hear from us with that day, but we're going to get back to you as soon as we can.
So we have an IEP based on a speech delay
Right.
from a couple of years ago, which we continued on, but now we have the ASD diagnosis
Okay.
as well as ADHD. So we're wanting to transition to IEP,
Okay.
more representative of where he's at now.
Okay. So his kiddo has speech, an IEP for speech, and now has a diagnosis of autism. And so you're wanting to update the IEP to truly reflect what his needs are.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to hit on a lot of those things that will help you. So, but first, what I want to do is I want you to think about all kids as general education students. Okay, that means my kid has the same rights and responsibilities as any other student, as do I as a parent. Okay, so every district has to do some form of multi-tiered system of support. Anybody ever heard of MTSS? Okay, great. So MTSS is a framework that the State Department has provided to the districts. They do not have to use the Kansas MTSS, but they have to use some kind of general education intervention, like a response to intervention. Anybody heard of the SIT team, Student Improvement Team, or Student Improvement Plan? Those are also. So what is MTSS? Think about your kid. Think about MTSS. It's a tiered support. Think of a triangle, okay? The top of that the bottom of that triangle is where 85% of our students are. It's the instruction. We got the quality educators. Everybody's getting the same instruction, and it's working for those students. But we have some students who are struggling and need more support. Now, this is general education. This is all students. Even if your student has an IEP, these are services that he or she would be getting. Donald would be getting. Okay? So at Tier 2, these kids need a little bit more small group instruction. So through MTSS or Student Improvement Team, General Interventions, the school is collecting data. And they have to have data to say that this is working or this isn't working. And it can be used as part of your evaluation process. And so we're going to look at that, and it's in reading, math. The tiered supports are in reading, math, social, emotional, and behavior. And you do have those little booklets that are on there, have information regarding MTSS, and it's also on our website. And if you can't find it, just call one of us. So Tier 3, very, very small number of students who need more intensive supports, like one-on-one supports. This is still general education interventions. Your kid can be here anywhere within this. Now, so as an example, Lola, she has an IEP because she is deaf and hard of hearing and she has speech and language issues. But her reading, she was struggling in reading, and she did not qualify for an IEP for reading. She had tiered supports to assist her through reading. So you can be anywhere within this. So always remember your kid is a general education student first. All right, so what is an IEP? Special education is specially designed instruction to meet the individual needs of a student. Specially designed instruction and supplemental aids and services. It's individualized, so it's for your specific kid. It's based on what their needs and their strengths are. It's the elements of the program. That education is the elements of the program, that special education component. And this program, the P is for the special education services provided. So the first thing we have to do is determine, the IEP team must determine how each child's exceptionality affects their involvement and progress in the general education curriculum. Anybody know what the general education curriculum is? Guess? It's everything every other first grader, second grader, sixth grader does. Not just reading, writing, math. It's the behavior components. it's playing at recess, it's eating at lunch. It's all of those things. It's everything every other age-appropriate student does. How does that disability affect their access to and progress in the general education curriculum? So we have this curriculum that the state has sent down, and this is what we're teaching. So we're going to look at that specially designed instruction, special education, and we're going to determine what this child needs. Everything in this triangle, modifications, structure and curriculum, schedules, instructional assessments and measures, those are all to be individualized as part of the IEP. What that child needs. We start with the general education curriculum, what everybody is learning. And then we determine what the student needs to be able to learn those. Okay, so the IEP is a communication vehicle. It is a way that parents and educators can be equal partners in determining what the child's program looks like. It provides a written commitment, so you know exactly what's going to happen, how often he's getting speech, where he's getting it. It's a management tool. It also is an evaluation device. So now you can see. Basically, it says, how are we going to get from here today to the end of the year? How are we going to get my kid from not being able to read to be able to read? Okay? So parents are to be provided a 10-day prior written notice before an IEP team meeting. You can waive this 10-day notice, but they have to give you a 10-day prior written notice saying who's going to be there, what we're going to do at the meeting, and if transition planning. When we talk transition planning, this is for our kids 14 and up who are transitioning to adulthood. And the purpose of the meeting, is it to just review the IEP, or are we looking at some changes as in adding services? Okay, so who are the IEP team members? Parents, special education teacher, general education teacher, somebody who represents the local education agency, LEA rep. A lot of times that's going to be your principal. It could be a school social worker. It could be a psychologist. If you're sitting in that meeting and you don't know who the district representative is, ask. Okay? And then others who have special knowledge of your child. So if your child has a babysitter that's really knowledgeable, or you have a neighbor or a sibling. Sean's brother went to his brother's IEP meetings. Sean's he's nonverbal for the most part. His brother went to his IEP meetings as he got older because he wanted Sean to be like all the other kids. And they're 15 months apart. I don't know what a 4th grader does. His brother does. He's in there. So even if there's peers, any way you can get as much information as possible. And then the transition service representative. The most important person on that team is sometimes not there. A lot of times, especially in elementary school. Who's that person? The child, the student. Now, Sean, he would be up all over the room, especially in elementary school. We got to a point where he would come in for 2 minutes, and then we put a picture in the middle of the table. Or I would go and I'd get a whole bunch of pictures of him doing different things, and I would throw them across the table so that when they came in, we're focused on him. Now, by the time Sean was in high school, he was going to his IEP meetings. He would lay his head down on the table, and we'd say, Sean, what do you want to do? McDonald's. We don't know how much he's taking in, but he knows we're talking about him. His brother led his IEP meetings from the time he was in 5th grade. Yeah, I created a monster with that one. So, he led his IEP meetings, and that made him an amazing self-advocate. So even if your kid comes in for the first 5 minutes, and the rule is that everybody in there has to say something positive, something amazing about this kid, so we're building that kid's self-esteem, because so many times our kids who learn differently struggle with that self-esteem. So if we can get them in that first 5 minutes and they can say what I like about school, and it's gonna be lunch and recess for your guys, right? Then that's what we've gotta do. We've gotta build that self-esteem. Yes, John?
A Facebook Live question. Somebody asked, last year, the only person that came to my daughter's IEP was a special ed teacher and myself.
And we're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
Okay, so the last time was only the special ed teacher
Yeah.
and herself? Okay, so that would not have been considered an official IEP team meeting? And it is a challenge sometimes. You can have an informal meeting with the teacher. It's not an IEP meeting. We used to have those all the time, planning meetings prior. So let's look at the people who have to be there. We talked about the general education teacher being a part of the IEP team. That general education teacher is invaluable. She knows that general education curriculum. She knows what kids that age are doing. And she knows how that disability is affecting my kid if he's in that general education classroom. You know, she's the one who knows I'm chasing this kid around, especially for your kiddos who aren't yet identified. So her voice is so important, or his voice, at that meeting. So we need to have that general education teacher there. And they're legally required to be there. So there are times when IEP members can be excused. Just to step backwards just a minute. There are people who are legally required to be there. The LEA rep, so the local education agency representative, parent, special education teacher, general education teacher, and anyone that we're talking about, I think this is the next slide actually, anyone we're talking about, any of their curriculum, or like we're talking about speech for your son. That speech therapist would need to be there unless they provided in writing and we've given written consent for them not to be there. So if we're not discussing the curriculum, or if we're not discussing speech at this meeting, we can say, oh, we don't need a speech therapist there. Sometimes we want that, just that small immediate group, because we're talking about this specific need or specific issue. Okay, so written excusal, these are the people that's required. General education teacher, special education teacher, a district representative, and someone to interpret the evaluation results. So for you, they've done the evaluation. We need somebody who can interpret those results and tell me how this affects my kid's progress in the general education curriculum. So that we have people who are knowledgeable for speech, for OT, for the school psychologist, whatever that may be. If I say an acronym and you guys don't know, please, because occupational therapy is OT. So we get stuck in this lane and sometimes we like to use those acronyms. Okay, so to me, I'm going to tell you the most important thing as a parent for you to do is know your kid. Okay? Who is your child? What are their strengths and what are their needs? So if you talk about your kiddo, what's one of your son's strengths?
He's very detail oriented.
Detail oriented. Okay.
He sees things that a lot of people don't.
Okay. Sees things that other people don't. Okay. How about you? A strength.
Strength.
Yeah. Strength of your daughter.
She's very creative.
Very creative. Okay. Donald. What's one of Donald's strengths?
He is very lovable.
Lovable. Okay.
That's, if you were gonna call on me, that's one of the
Lovable. Ditto. Is that what you said? Ditto.
Yeah.
How about you?
Very active internal life.
Active.
Internal life. A lot of imagination, not necessarily engaging with others, but a lot going on in his head.
Okay. A lot of imagination. A lot going on up here. So our trick is, how do we get it out of here to there?
Very creative.
Creative. Okay.
My son, he learns fast.
He learns fast.
If he doesn't know anything and you tell him, he learns.
Okay.
I remember that.
He's a very fast learner. Okay. One of your students? Are you a teacher or?
No, I'm a court-appointed special advocate.
Oh,
I'm a
thank you for
volunteer.
being here.
You're welcome. So, right now, I don't have any kids
Okay.
that have IEPs.
Okay.
You know, sometimes.
So we have a CASA worker here. Thank you for being here and thank you for what you do. It's a very hard job, or not a job, but a volunteer. It's something that needs to be there. Okay, so everybody gave me, oh, Madre.
Yeah.
You hid over there for me.
I want to explain to you.
Okay.
So she imitates a lot, and then she loves music.
Okay,
So
she imitates and she loves music.
with that, they will motivate her to learn.
Okay, perfect. How about you?
I'm a social worker, but I guess
Okay.
my girls I work with are really artistic.
Artistic? Okay. Stephanie? You have a son.
Overcommitted. It makes his mother overcommitted. No, he's lovable, funny.
Did you say he committed his mother? I didn't hear
Yeah,
that.
exactly. He needs to commit his mother.
I wanted to get that on tape for you.
Yeah, he'll appreciate that.
He's funny and loving.
He's funny, loving. Just got his driver's license at the age of 23, so we're really excited.
Awesome.
My daughter also has a really great sense of humor and an excellent memory.
Sense of humor and an excellent memory.
That's probably
Sean?
better than mine.
He's very detail-oriented with the things he likes, he's very interested in.
He's very detail-oriented in things he likes.
I've worked with folks similar like that would be very passionate and helpful and caring.
Okay, passionate, helpful, and caring. Okay, so amazing individuals. I'm going to tell you, people typically call families together when sorry. Oh, I'm high. I thought I did. Oh, I forgot me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Who is Sean? Sean is birthday guy. He sings happy birthday when and that is literally, if you are upset, I will tell you, happy birthday. You cannot be mad when you sing happy birthday. And so, if we're, as an example, thank you for asking that. As an example of why we need to know who our kids are, their strengths, interests, and needs. You got one on the?
Well, we have several.
Okay.
One person says, mine is always happy.
Happy.
Another, perseverance, loving, and smart.
Outstanding.
And then another one is very visual.
Very visual. Okay, great. Okay, so as an example, why is it important for Sean's team to know that he loves happy birthday? Sean's in elementary school, and he is in a special education classroom and the general education classroom. He's going in the general education classroom, he's falling to the ground, and he is throwing this huge tantrum. And Sean, we created a circle of friends, so kids who knew him. The parent would pick him up, or the teacher would pick him up and carry him. He's losing dignity. The parent is losing dignity. She's getting bruised shins, too. He's not learning anything, and he's getting that sensory input that he needs. He kept saying, pepper, pepper, pepper. One of the kids says, he's saying happy birthday. So every time Sean would hit the floor, everybody down the hallway would sing happy birthday. And it's like the tension melts not only from him, but from everybody there. So knowing that that's his passion was so important. So knowing who your kid is important. And it needs to be observable and measurable, okay? So what does that look like for my kid? The challenge is a lot of times, well, the majority of the time, we get calls when things aren't going well. You know, somebody's struggling. And so we're hearing the bad stuff. It breaks my heart when I talk to a parent and I say, okay, give me the kid's strengths. And I'll get like 5. Okay, what are their needs? Especially if you got a kid with behavior disorders. It's 2 to 3 pages. If this is how I see my kid, this is how the school sees my kid and everybody else. We need to know what those needs are, but we need to know those strengths and passions, what drives them. Okay, so we need to look at their present level of academic achievement and functional performance. Academic achievement and functional performance. We need to look at them as a whole kid, fine motor, gross motor, self-help skills, social, emotional, communication. Overall, remember, look at what as parents, we don't like to compare our kids to their peers, but for them to access and progress in the general education curriculum, I need to know what grade your kiddo in?
He's in fourth grade.
Fourth grade. So I need to know what other fourth graders are doing. So I know what he needs to know to be socially appropriate. So let's look at, there's one of the handouts in here, and it is on the webpage as well. It's just a resource. Your homework before you go to any IEP meeting is to write down your kid's strengths and needs. And that's a handout in that second packet, I think. Write down their interests. Sean's was Wheel of Fortune, Happy Birthday, Pez dispensers, and it changed over time except Wheel of Fortune and birthday, and he's 26. So, but write those down because that interest, if you got a kid with behavior challenges, or you've got a kid who socially is not engaging, those interests or passions, many people call them obsessions, those interests and passions are what drive that kid. That's what I'm going to work for. School's their job. I mean, I'm not sure, but your fourth graders probably didn't care about the grades. So what is he there for? This is my job. What am I working for? And so that's why it's important to know that. And when I talk about needs and strengths, make them observable and measurable. Okay? So I had a dad at one presentation. He said he likes to count things. He needs to count things. His kid was struggling behaviorally. Walking down the hallway was the biggest thing. Could not stay in line, struggled. So we're sitting here brainstorming, and I said, what does he said he obsessively likes to count. Okay. Well, how about as he's walking down the hall, he's either counting the tiles or counting the ceiling. How do we use that counting to get that down that hall? So use that passion, use that strength. Okay, so present level of academic achievement. That's pretty, it's academics, reading, writing, and math, right? We need to know where my kid is. How are they reading? What's their reading level? Now, a lot of times when you're looking at your IEP and you're sitting here looking at these evaluation results, and it says he's on a Edmark level, or I can't even tell you the test, but it lists test scores. I don't know what that means. Even to say he reads on a third grade level, I don't know what that means. Why isn't he on a fourth grade level? Is it comprehension? Is it fluency? Please divide this down. And if they say it's a fourth grade, so tell me what that looks like, please. Observable and measurable so you understand. Okay, and so even turns in homework 30% of the time. That's affecting his academic achievement. Functional performance. Can they use these skills throughout the day? So if I've got a kid who is in speech and he's able to talk and communicate to the speech therapist or works well with the social worker, can he take that skill and use it with unfamiliar adults and his peers? Always go back to the general education peers. How is he engaging with those peers? And what is his functional skills? Can he read the lunch menu? Can he read the signs they have across the hall? Now, for you guys, elementary school, think about it. We're talking functional performance, and some of you guys' kids are on the spectrum, so have autism, or may have autism, and their challenges are social and emotional and behavioral. In elementary school, we're looking at the core virtues too. You see all those signs across. Our kids aren't getting that naturally. We need specially designed instruction to help them learn those. So look around and see all these things that are happening in the school. Look at the manual, the school handbook they give. Look at that, because are there things in there that his behavior we need to talk about, because he is going to do this. We know he's going to run up and down the hall. And you get detention for doing that. Whatever that may be, we need to look at how all of his disability affects everything he's doing. Okay, so again, the IEP team is looking to see how the disability affects the students access and progress in the general education curriculum. So we need to address the unique needs that arise from the student's disability. So look at, like I just said, all of what's going on. So we stepped back and we've looked at to see who my kid is. Okay, socially, emotionally, academically, everything. For our kids who are in high school, same thing. But we want to look at what are the skills they have to be successful after high school. We need to make sure we're learning those now as little guys. In the state of Kansas, Kansas State Board of Education went around and did town hall meetings a few years ago and asked businesses what the most important skills that 26-year-old Kansans have to be successfully employed. It wasn't those hard skills, like how to be a welder or how to program a computer. It's the essential, the soft skills. That ability to communicate with my peers, that ability to take criticism, those kind of things. So look at your kid in elementary school. Let's start teaching those now. So what are peers learning? What are age-appropriate peers learning? Look at grade level curriculum. Look at projects, science projects, events, school dances, activities, clubs. Sean, when he was in middle school, would go to the school dances. He never went into the gym. He would go eat nachos and go home. He was there to what his ability, what he wanted to do, and the next day the girls all said he danced with them. So, yeah, I don't know how he danced, but so it's all about making sure our kids have the same access to everything. And what is their present level regarding that? So there are several different types of curriculum, if you want to look at it. Intended. That's what the state has developed and said, okay, this is the curriculum, these are the standards that the districts need to teach. The taught curriculum is me standing up here teaching you. If Sean came up here or Stephanie came up here and did this training, they're going to teach it in a different way, whether it's the questions and answers, whatever it is. Every teacher teaches differently. Same curriculum, but you're teaching it different. Structure, everything. The learned curriculum is each one of you are learning something different because it's specific to your specific child. Anybody know what the hidden curriculum is?
What they're learning from their peers and just from being involved.
What they're learning from their peers and what they're being in just being involved in things. A lot of times those hidden curriculum are things that our kids don't get because it's the things that we assume kids automatically pick up. As an example, Tori is standing out in the hall with his friends, and something happens, and his friend lets out this cuss word and gets frustrated, and everybody laughs, and it's all fine. Tori goes in the classroom and realizes he forgot his math book, and he asks the teacher if he can go get it. The teacher says no, so he lets out a barrage of the same cuss words. Now he's in trouble. No, he did not understand that it's only socially appropriate to use those in this environment. It's those hidden social rules that kids on the spectrum, autism spectrum, have kids with mental health needs, all of our kids. So really looking at that. It's things that are okay at home, things that are not okay, things that are okay with grandma but not with mom. And so if you, we talked about those projects, things that other kids are doing. I don't know if you can pick Sean out of that picture, but in 5th grade, their project had to do science projects. And, well, Sean doesn't really have to do one. We don't, And I'm like, yeah, he's going to do one. Does everything everybody else. And he's got a great team. And I said, okay, we want to have him paired with a peer who has limited parental participation. Not a bad parent. There's a single dad who has 3 kids. He's working 2 jobs. Who does the science project, guys? Come on. Parent, right, parent. Well, Jonathan's dad can't do it. So who's going to do it? The teachers. The teachers are going to help. Sean's got a whole family. He's got Paris, he's got Pierce, he's got this. So Sean and Jonathan did a science project where they counted pepperoni on pizzas. Twice they went out to eat. So Jonathan usually doesn't get to go out to eat. Sean's goals are social and communication. Twice we delivered pizza to the school for snacks. Now who's the most important kid in that classroom now? Everybody wants to be with Sean. And so that's how they did their science project. So really looking outside the box and using those resources and helping not only Sean but other kids as well. So, yes, Sean.
We have a question. Is functional performance eval a required part of the IEP evaluation?
Is a functional performance eval a required part of the evaluation? There's not an evaluation that's called a functional performance eval. We want to look at the kid overall. And as we're looking at this kid overall, we're looking at, you can't base a kid's needs on one test, like an IQ test or a speech eval or a reading eval. You've got to have interviews, observations. You need to look at how this kid is functioning across the environment. And yes, it has to be part of that evaluation, and it should be a part of looking at their functional skills should be a part of every IEP meeting. How is this, my kiddo's functional skills? What's your kid's name?
Francis.
Francis. So how is Francis functioning in the general education environment? Can he use the skills that we've been working on? Or other skills? Is he using them socially appropriately with his peers? Is he able to, if we're out, okay, so we have indoor recess. We've had plenty of those lately. And everybody's playing a game, and they're counting. We've been working on counting with Francis, and he can do it when he's sitting with me, but now we get him in a game with peers, and he can't do it. He can't use it functionally. So that's, we want to look at, can he use this functionally, as any other kid? Does that make sense, guys?
Yes.
Okay. So, how many of you guys' kids have behavior challenges? Okay. So when we talk about behavior, most of the time we raise our hands like this because it's those running or hitting or crawling under the desk or blurting out. Behavior can be shutting down too. It's anything that affects my kids' access to and progress in the, it impedes their learning or their peers' learning. So if a child's behavior impedes their learning or that of their peers, then the IEP team has to consider doing, how are we going to address this behavior? So you're going to do a functional behavioral assessment. Know that you don't have to wait for an IEP meeting to request a functional behavioral assessment or for the school to do a functional behavioral assessment. And if we skip back all the way at the beginning, we talked about MTSS, or those general education interventions. A functional behavioral assessment can be done as part of those general education interventions. What we're doing is we're looking at, what's your kiddo's name?
John.
John. Okay, so we're looking at John across the environment throughout the day. Where is John successful? Where is he struggling? What's happening before, after? So what is that behavior? Is it escape? Is it attention seeking? What is it that he's doing? And then we want to look and say, how do we teach John? What can we teach him? Socially appropriate replacement behavior. We want to create a positive behavior support plan. And the law says positive. We're not talking punitive. We're not talking, and it does happen. That's why we've got to step back and say, that's where these interests and obsessions and passions come in. What drives him? So look at John across the environment. There's times when this kid's successful. He's an amazing guy. He's just got some challenging times. And so during that time frame, what's going on? And it could be something social. He's not getting that hidden curriculum piece. It could be something academic. It's too high, too low, whatever. Call me. So we want to teach him socially appropriate replacement behaviors. Okay? So that nobody else it's even though Sean may be in 6th grade and he has significant autism, we don't want to teach him socially appropriate replacement behaviors for a 1st grader. We want to make sure that he is learning to be a 6th grader. Okay, so goals. All right, let's step back just a second. The first and foremost thing you have to do in an IEP, very first step, before anything else happens, is you have to know who the kid is. Present level of academic achievement and functional performance. You have to identify the kid's needs. Okay? Observable and measurable. If it's not a need written in the IEP, it doesn't have to be addressed. Okay, so you need to know what those needs are. And need is a word in your dictionary now. It's like in all caps. Want is over here. I don't want my kid to need special education. He needs this. And how are we going to address these needs? So focus on those needs. So first we're going to figure out who my kid is. Present level of academic achievement and functional performance. Across the school environment. Strengths, needs, and interests. After we've done, as a team, we're meeting, we've talked about those strengths and needs. We've identified the needs, and now we're saying, okay, which needs are we going to address through goals? Annual goals. A goal is a dream with a deadline of 1 year. What's my kid going to accomplish this year? Okay? So it's a statement that describes educational performance anticipated within a year's time. They're curriculum-based. It has to focus on an area. Okay? Reading, writing, math, behavior, social skills, speech, fine motor. So focus on an area focus. So give me a need. Somebody give me a need. Has to be observable and measurable. Who's got one?
Reading.
Math.
Math. Okay? Anybody else got an observable, measurable need? Yes?
Time on task.
Time on task. So with this kiddo and your kiddo, time on task. He's off task for 50 minutes out of 60. Sorry. That's the only thing I could come up with that quickly. So, observable, measurable. Math, I just read an IEP yesterday, and I'm still trying to figure out, because it said he is doing 5th grade math. He's not able to do 5th grade math. Well, I used to teach high school math, and I don't know what 5th grade math is. Can he divide three-digit division? Can he do algebraic equations? Where's the disconnect here? So bring it down to as observable as possible. And that's where the school has the data. We're talking about these goals. You as a parent do not write goals, but you need to, it's very helpful and it's important that you understand the components of a goal. Okay? Yes?
Would you consider social as measurable?
Yes, social. If we look at it, so he looks at let's talk about eye contact, or if we've got him, he plays during this 15 minutes, he plays parallel the entire time. He does not engage his peers. If you make it observable, make sure everybody on that team knows what that need looks like. Because if you said that Francis fidgets, what's that mean? Anybody know what fidget means?
Like with a fidget spinner.
Fidget spinner?
He doesn't sit, or he can't sit still long enough. He's got to be motivated, doing something while he's like working on it.
Okay, he can't sit still long enough. He's got to be motivated to do something. Some teachers could say fidget is just like this. He's doing this. Fidget could be kicking. Everybody needs to know what it looks like, because in your classroom as a teacher, it doesn't make a difference. He can do this all day. It doesn't bother me. But in your classroom, it might. So it's also, we have to identify a direction. Okay, so we've area focus. What's that mean? Are we going to increase it? Our time on task, we need to increase that time on task. Behavior, we need to decrease that behavior. Reflect reasonable expectations. How much growth are we going to see within that year? And be tied to the general education curriculum. So short-term objectives are benchmarks. They're not required in the IEP unless a student is taking an alternate assessment. But I don't know any district, I've not seen any IEPs that don't use them. Basically, you have your goal, and then you have first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. To me, that's, visually I can see it. And that's what most of our IEPs, yes?
Can you please give an example specific to the tied to the general education curriculum? Because I'm trying to see if it is special needs kid, they will be in math way below level than general education. So when general education at that grade level will be different level, how do you tie that? Can you give an example?
Yep, most definitely. So the question is, if you have a kid who is significantly lower in math and they're in the general education curriculum, how do you tie that to the general education curriculum? How do you tie the goal to it?
And then how do you ask that question when they're not in the general education with that much time and anyway? So how do you ask in an IEP meeting that question to the team?
Okay, so how do you ask that question to an IEP team?
Yeah, how are they applying?
Okay, and how are they able to do this if they're not in the general education classroom doing their math? They're in the special education classroom. And we are going to talk about the least restricted environment where the kid receives services here in a minute. But that's where we want to look at the present level of academic achievement. For some of our kids who struggle, and I'll talk about accommodations and modifications, Sean was never able to do 4th or 5th grade math. But when he was in 2nd grade, he was doing math on a calculator while he was in that gen ed classroom. He may be doing something different in math. He may not be doing multiplication or division, but he's doing math on his level in the math classroom. Does that make sense? What you do is you say, okay, here's her present level. Here's what her present level is. What are peers doing? And how are we going to make sure that she's accessing the general education curriculum? What math is.
But they will not be sitting in the general education classroom, but they will be in the special ed classroom.
Exactly. Even if they're in the special education classroom, they are having access to the general education curriculum that meets their needs. Some of our kids may be working on money, skill, and time, even when kids are working on algebra. So we're still going to look at what their needs are, and our goal is to get them as close to their peers as possible. But we need to look at what they need to learn and what their present levels are. Okay? So yes.
So we're wanting them to get as close as possible to what the grade level curriculum is.
Right.
And our child isn't able to get to that level, but they're at a level that they should be at.
Right.
Okay, so then how are they graded?
How are they graded?
Yeah, because you've got the curriculum and this is the level you're supposed to be at, but this is the level my child can accomplish.
Right. Okay, so the question is, I'm kind of repeating it so that Facebook has it too. The question is, if the grade level is here and my kid is learning here, how are the grades given? So I'm going to give you some examples of modifications and accommodations for kids. The IEP team can determine how the child is graded and based on their curriculum. Because he can be sitting in that general education classroom where they're doing 4th grade math and he's working on his 2nd grade math because that's where he is. And get graded on what his curriculum is, not graded on that 4th grade piece. So, and so when you get to high school, you got a kiddo like Sean who is struggling here. How are the IEP team is going to determine how we're going to give this kiddo those credits and those grades. And that's like back at the beginning we said everything's negotiable. You know, we want every kid to be learning the general education curriculum, age-appropriate general education curriculum. That is our ultimate goal. How many supports and services and resources and everything we can give this kid to get them there. There are kids no matter how much we give them, are not going to be able to get that to that level. But we want to get them as much as possible and be able to grade them on their level. Okay, so a goal. An IEP goals, 4 components: behavior, condition, criteria, and time frame. And you guys know that already, right? It's all done. We're done, right? Okay, good. Good, I'm here for a reason. So, what will a child do? Remember, this is just an overview for you to understand what a goal looks like. What will a child do? The behavior. That's that need, guys. That's that need. Because it is confusing when you say behavior here, because you're thinking a kid with behavior challenges. The behavior is that need. And then what will be provided to the child? That's the condition. Are we providing him access to peers so that he can learn appropriate social skills? Are we providing him with math instruction? How much and how often and percentage of time? That's the criteria in the evaluation. Meaning that how much, where is he right now? Who is he right now, his present level? 50% of the time he does this. But our goal is that he will have to do it 80% of the time. And that's based on his needs and what amount of time. That's the time frame. The time frame is a year, an IEP year. And I'm going to give you guys an example to kind of help it stick together a little better. So then, now you have your measurable goal to address that identified need. Let's look at Tony. Tony is able to call familiar adults by name without prompting. He enjoys being with his peers, and they prompt Tony to say their name by showing their name sign, ASL. His parents would like to see Tony's social interaction with his peers increase. Somebody tell me what the need is. Anybody?
Audio.
Huh?
Audio.
His need is social and communication. Okay? To be able to call, his parents want him to increase his social interactions. Okay? Make sure your input is there. You know, it's when you have a kid with significant needs like Sean, our goals were that he would live interdependently in his community. We all live interdependently. For JP would tell you his goal was to get to college, to make lots of money and move out. And he did. He makes more money. Yeah, he's good. So, for Tony, the identified need is social interaction and communication skills. That's one of the needs we've identified. So, we're going to say his need is to verbally call somebody by name. And I would say verbally call a peer by name. Because the most important thing for me is my kid is able to socialize with his peers. Because there's a lot of our kids who struggle socially or who are very gifted manipulators of adults. Pegged it, didn't I? Yep. They have us trained. So, but I want him to be able to be socially appropriate with his peers. So he has to have peers. That's the condition. He's got to be with peers. That's the condition of the goal. So 85% accuracy on 3 out of 4 data days with teacher observation and data sheets. There's got to be a way that they're taking data. Sometimes that's an evaluation. Sometimes it's by the speech therapist observing, the teacher observing. There has to be data that you can look at as a team and say, okay, he is making progress. So that's the criteria and how we're going to evaluate by the end of the school year or IEP year. An IEP is updated annually, and an IEP does not expire. Even if tomorrow is the date on the IEP, we wrote it a year ago, we can still be working on it as a team together to update that IEP. Okay? So, by March 20th, 2019, Tony will verbally call 4 peers by names without prompts, with 85% accuracy on 3 out of 4 data days, with teacher observation and data sheets. What that tells me as a parent, they're working on Tony communicating with his peers. Okay, so accommodations. Accommodations don't change what you're teaching. This is those extra time on tests, taking a test in another area. It may include a variety of techniques. Sometimes you don't know your kid is getting accommodations until the next year, because sometimes we have teachers who automatically do that, and it's just part of their teaching. So getting to know your kid's teacher and getting to know what they do, because we want to make sure we capture that for next year. What is it that's helping my kid be successful? But accommodations can be provided, and it does not change the content of what we're teaching. Modifications. We want to think really carefully when we do modifications, because we're saying this kid's not going to be learning this age-appropriate curriculum, okay, like Madre, like you were saying. So, Vegeta would not be able to, she's not learning on the 5th grade level math. So what kind of accommodations are we going to give her? And that may be math that's at a lower level. How are we going to modify this curriculum so that she's able to do it? Instead of a 4th grade spelling list, it's a 1st grade spelling list. So it changes what the student is expected to learn. JP needed accommodations. Sean needed modifications. So as an example, they're in 8th grade, and you ask, who does these accommodations and who does these modifications? The general ed teacher, the special ed teacher? It needs to be a partnership. Okay, let's work together to do it. With this one, it was an 8th grade social studies teacher that came up with this for Sean. So everybody's studying Explorer. That's the assignment, is they have to do this character map of Lewis and Clark and discover 6 things that they're doing. Anybody tell me what Lewis and Clark discovered?
There was no
Northwest Pass, anybody else?
They mapped the recently purchased Louisiana Purchase.
The Louisiana Purchase, that's not easy to say. Actually, Lewis and Clark were botanists. Now, my kid has the same right to forget the curriculum as you did. Think about it. Do we use this? We teach this. His 8th grade teacher said, you know what we're really talking about here? What it's like to be an explorer and why it's important to explore our environments. And Sean could care less about this. This is way out of his realm. And so, or at least to our knowledge, he's getting it, he's just not able to get it out. So he's in that general education curriculum. The teacher says Sean's going to create a map of what he's discovering. Okay? So he was moving to high school. He's discovering the high school, the McDonald's, the Walmart, those things in the community. He made a character map. He was in that general education classroom and in the special education classroom working on this. That's a modified curriculum. And his grade was based on this, not on Lewis and Clark. So, special education is specially designed instruction and supplemental aids and services. Okay, supplemental aids and services are accommodations, modifications, supports for the educators, or supports for the student-related services. If your child's teacher needs extra training or support because there's a different methodology, a behavior technique, we need to make sure it's in there. I would say you want to identify who your kid is, right? And secondly, I want to go into that gen ed teacher and even the special education teacher and say, how can I help you help my kid? Because we assumed when we moved from Fort Riley to the Kansas City area, we assumed that I could hand her that IEP and that box. I'm the perfect mom. That's a perfect IEP. I had sold Sean as a peer model. Of course, he's laying in the floor yelling the whole time as we're meeting. But we have to make sure that the teachers have what they need in that IEP because it's a roadmap for them. So supports and services, it may be in-service training, it may be, for if I've got a kid who's using an assistive tech device, it may be training on how to help that kid in the general ed classroom because you're the one with them. Sensory, how to work with sensory needs. Related services, it's an endless list. Adaptive music, PE, adaptive PE, OT, PT, speech, transportation. Whatever it is, so we've identified who my kid is, first step, right? Identified those needs, wrote the goals, stepped back and said, okay, we've got goals on these needs, but what I do, and what I would say, go through the IEP, highlight all the needs, okay? Highlight the needs, and then say, where are we addressing this need? Where is this? Yes?
The acronym LEA under related services, what is that?
LEA is Local Education Agency. Thank you. I almost lost it for a second too. So we want to make sure that we have who the kid is, and we've highlighted these needs in the IEP. And I should be able to pick up your kid's IEP or anybody in our families together. If you work with us, we'll look over that IEP even and help you understand it. So any one of our staff should be able to pick it up, and it should be stranger friendly. So I know your kid. Sean.
Where do those training supports go in the IEP?
There is a section in there that says training or supports for teachers, and I can't exactly answer that exactly because every IEP in the state of Kansas is different. They're all formatted differently.
And is the training and supports in the IEP a goal, or is it listed in a separate section?
It's listed in a separate section. Good question. Goals are specific to what the kid needs. The training, if the teacher like Sean's, I don't want them to have training. They did I don't want, right? Want's not in our dictionary. The teacher didn't need training on autism. Okay? Because your kid with autism, your kid maybe, all of these kids are different. Sean's needs were social, inclusion, sensory, and the communication strategies and behavior strategies. Those were the things that we wanted to make sure that were listed in there that teachers had training on. And training specific to his needs. And when I say teachers, I mean people, even the paras, if your kid works with a para. So, for kids, any of you guys, kids, yes?
Once you have requested the IEP, you met and they say, yes, we are going to have John an IEP.
Right.
From that point, then do I work directly with, do they set up, well, this is what we're saying we're going to do.
Okay, good question. So, John is being evaluated. The next step, you signed their consent form, they're evaluating him, they have 60 school days from the time you signed it to do the evaluation, determine eligibility, meet to determine eligibility rather, write an IEP if he qualifies, and start the services. So what happens is your next step is we're going to meet as a team, that IEP team, we're going to look over that data. Yep, John qualifies. We're going to write the IEP. Now, they will come in with the draft, which is good. My suggestion is always email your questions or your kids' strengths and needs to them beforehand, but you are a part of that whole process, and you want to be a part of it, and you want them to come in with a draft because otherwise, and know that you don't have to sign it in that meeting, okay? Services won't start, but you don't have to sign it because, especially when you're going into an evaluation, and if you're going to create an IEP at the same time, you're talking your baby, and I'll tell you, I've been in tears at so many IEP meetings for Sean, even as he got older, because I'm talking here, And that's why it's always important to bring somebody else. And I will tell you, my husband, when he was able to go, I would sit there and they would say, Sean can't do this. And all of a sudden, you know, I'm on high alert. We went through some rough times. We went through some really rough times and had to come back and rebuild a team, because otherwise as adults we're doing this and Sean's here regressing, and things aren't always easy, but we've got to figure out how to work together. But I'm sitting there and I said, you can't do that. And my mind just, I forgot everything else. That's why you write down things and you go. My husband's kicking me and he said, they said he can't unless we do this. So it was like, please never say can't, won't, don't, never. In my IEP meeting, let's figure out a way to phrase it, because as a mom, that sets the mama bear off. So it really is, so that's why it's important to have people there and go prepared.
Can I
Okay.
ask a follow-up question? too?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So, say you've got this IEP developed,
Mhm.
I've signed on it, but in acting on it, there are things that need to be tweaked. Can that be done, or do they have to go in and do all this reevaluating again?
No. So my kid's got an IEP, and we've signed it. It worked for a while, but now there's some challenges, and things aren't going well. You can call an IEP meeting at any time, come back together and meet, and it can be tweaked at any time. It has to be updated annually, but it can be revisited at any time. So, and that's why it's so important to have open communication with your kid's team. And if you're struggling, sometimes as parents, the hardest thing you can do is trust. That's my baby. Especially when you've got a kid with limited communication. And I mean, even those kids who have, when anxiety is here, their communication goes down. Find that one person in that building that you trust. And I put trust in air quotes here. But that is the hardest thing we have to do as parents, is build that trust. That's why you have to make sure your team has everything they need. So, yes, John.
Somebody was commenting about not making sure people know they don't have to sign the IEP. So you might reiterate that parents do not have to sign the IEP until they're ready.
Right. Okay. So the comment was that parents don't have to sign the IEP. You don't have to sign the IEP at that meeting. You have to be able to give informed consent. So if you need to walk away, look at it, send it to us, and we'll brainstorm with you and make sure it looks like, because we want there to be clear communication. Everybody to understand what's going on. And if you've got this, I don't know what's going on, and it's like sometimes you're communicating with people who are talking the same language but different language. You know, I have a mom who was a friend of mine, and they kept telling her, we're going to teach your kid to read. His reading goal from 4th to 3rd. We're going to increase his fluency. And she's getting upset. And finally, after visiting with her, because it's a little different on the phone with I'm visiting with you versus an IEP meeting, she said, how does he learn to decode a word? You know, it wasn't that she was upset with them. It was that she didn't understand how they were going to get there. And so being able to step back and look at that and understand. Now, let's say we've got an IEP, we're renewing that, we're at that annual IEP meeting, and we're only going to change the goals or some accommodations. Legally, the parent does not have to give consent. The only time they have to get parental consent is if we change placement, which is more special education, in the general ed, more or less than 25%, or material change in services, which means speech, OT, PT, those kind of things, 25%. But we want to work with them, and if you don't feel comfortable, it's not that I'm disagreeing. Okay, I'm at 10. Yeah, we're going to fly here for a second. So, individualized healthcare plan, I'm just going to tell you, if you have a kid who has healthcare needs that affect them at school, whether it's just taking medication, or whether it's a feeding tube, or, I've got a kid that anything that we need to do that affects them medically, they need to have an individualized healthcare plan. So if you want to call our office, we have health information specialists that can help you with this. We have draft ones or some really great templates that will help with that. So I'm going to fly through that. So the IEP has to have frequency, duration, and location of services. Meaning, how often, when's it going to start, where are we going to provide it? Is he getting speech in the speech room, or is he getting it in small group, or is it individual? Is the para one-to-one, or is it a para in the general ed classroom? Okay? How often is he getting speech 30 minutes a week? Is he in the special education room 30 minutes out of the day? Or 45 minutes out of the day? What does that look like? Again, observable and measurable. And then there's a statement of modifications on state and district-wide assessments. Extended school year. Will the student need extended school year? That's not summer school. That's special education services during the summer. Even if the school district has summer school and your kid needs special education during summer school, that's a discussion that school you need to have with the district. And then the communication needs of the child, whether it's a kid who uses sign language, assistive technology, a student who uses Braille, positive behavior interventions. We talked a little about that. Communication needs, kids with limited English proficiency. These are things that we need to also consider. Assistive technology. We're using so many tablets and everything else in our districts. Just because you hand my kid a tablet and he can play a game doesn't mean he understands how to use this. Or it may mean we need to add a different app for a scheduling app or something. Or we may need something for him to be able to write. It could be as simple as a pencil grip, or it can be a communication device. Yes, Sean?
A parent is asking, epilepsy meds on site for the school nurse, does that need an IHP?
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. Sean had a seizure at school and we didn't have an IHP. We need a plan as who's going to give that med, when it's going to be given, what's going to happen if that nurse is not there. It needs to be clear and observable. So if you've got a kid who's transition age, we switch the focus to what they want to do after high school. Okay? Employment, community participation, post-secondary education. For those of you, these guys in here are younger kiddos, which it's always important to start planning. On our website and on our Facebook page, you will see 2 of our events we have going on statewide that are specifically focused on transition age students. Call our center also, or Stephanie has them with the Lynn. She also knows where that information is.
We will also be having sessions on transition further in the year.
She will also be having sessions on transition further in the year, but you want to start with these 2 trainings first. So, really quick, this is one of the most important components. We've done who my kid is. We've got the goals, we got the accommodations, the supports, the modifications. We also, in the IEP, something that I missed was how often are we going to communicate back and forth? Is it every quarter? We're just going to get every quarter you have to get a progress report saying that here's how he's making progress towards this goal. So quarterly you get that. But you may need that more often. You may need some, for Sean, because he's nonverbal, I don't know what's going on. So we had a daily notebook and then daily emails coming back and forth so that I could communicate with him. So let's look at least restrictive environment. Yes, Sean?
So if the teacher or the team isn't following the IEP, what is the window for having an emergency IEP meeting?
If the teacher or the team is not following the IEP, what is the timeline for emergency IEP meeting? There's not really a set timeline. I think that's one of those questions that I would say call us because there's so many different factors that play into that. So, least restrictive environment says to the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities are to be educated, this straight from the law, with children who are non-disabled and at special classes, separate schooling, or other removal of children with disabilities from the regular education environment occurs only when the nature or severity of the disability is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplemental aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. So what does that mean? we have to step back and we have to look at where this kiddo is. And the IEP will have to say when the kid is not going to be in the general education environment. There is a section on that. So, but what does that mean? It means, and this is not a handout you guys had, I added it to it. We always start with the premise that kids are going to be in the regular education classroom, where they would be if they didn't have a disability. In their home school, this is where we start. In their neighborhood school, in the regular education classroom. Then we have to back up and say, maybe he needs a little bit of special education. Now, first off, special education is not a place. It's specially designed instruction and supports and service or supplemental aids and services. Okay? So we start at that regular education classroom, we pull that IEP. This is the last thing you decide. The very last discussion in an IEP meeting. And it's determined annually. You look at it, you say, he's in the regular education classroom. Let's step backwards, okay? JP needed some really direct instruction in reading and OT. He received those in the special education classroom, and he received some of his services in the general education classroom. Some kids are going to be in special schools. Some of our kids are going to psychiatric residential treatment facilities. Some of them, there are alternative schools. This is an IEP team decision, and you are part of that decision. Some kids may be in a special education classroom all day. Those classes are called different things at every building. It could be a resource room, it could be a functional classroom, but it's all based on who your kid is. And the importance of tying it back to the general education curriculum is I want my kid to the most appropriate possibility for them to be where they would be if they didn't have a disability. Okay, Steph? And then we're going to back up and say home instruction. Home instruction is not homeschooling. This is homebound for kids who, for some reason, cannot be in that school building. And then we have institutions or hospitals. Sean was in the hospital for pancreatitis when he was 5, and they provided services there at the hospital. Okay, this is another one. We want to start with where the child would be if they didn't have a disability. Consideration is given to any harmful effects to the quality of the child. Now, when I said in your neighborhood school, in the general education classroom is where we're going to start, that's where we start. But we also want to step back and look. The district may have a specific classroom. If you've got a kid with significant needs, that classroom may be over here because they have the training, the autism specialists, intensive services they need. But if he just needs speech or OT, here. Now, Sean was never over here in this autism classroom because his needs could be met over here in that general education building in a classroom with teachers who had that training. A child with a disability is not removed from the general education environment solely because they can't do the curriculum, because they're not on that grade level. So that's where we do those modifications. Parents have a right to be involved in the LRE decision, least restrictive environment. It's based on the IEP. There's a couple of forms in your handouts that are really great at showing you where those goals are being addressed. And it's a real good think sheet, or it's a good way to communicate with your teachers. So you need to understand the IEP process, be prepared for the meeting, know your parental rights, and share your dreams for your kid. So, Sean, put him in an institution, right? 2 years ago, Sean was his brother's best man at his wedding. In front of 250 people. Sean rocked it. Now, he didn't do the bachelor party thing, you know. Sean did everything a best man is supposed to do. His toast was singing what? Happy Wedding Day. Happy Wedding Day. Sean has 2 jobs now. It's possible, but it takes a team, and it takes knowing your kid and working together, and it is not easy. It's not all roses. And that's why we're here to help you navigate that. And remember, we are statewide. We have resources across the state. So please contact us at any time that you need help. Stephanie, thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming.
And thank you guys for being here in the room. That made it better for me. All right.